Have you ever felt there's more to reality than what meets the eye, like an invisible thread connecting everything, or a moment where time seemed to bend around you? These whispers of something deeper, something beyond the physical, are glimpses into the vast, uncharted territories of spiritual dimensions. These aren't just abstract ideas tucked away in ancient texts or the stuff of mystical legends. They're living, breathing layers of existence that shape our intuition, dreams, and even the synchronicities that defy logic. And today, we're stepping beyond the veil to explore what these dimensions truly are, why they've captivated seekers for centuries, and how understanding them can transform the way you experience life itself. Think of reality as a grand symphony, with each spiritual dimension adding its own unique note to the harmony. In esoteric traditions, these dimensions aren't distant realms reserved for the enlightened few. They're woven into the fabric of our everyday lives. From the subtle energy that lingers after a heartfelt conversation to the uncanny sense of déjà vu that leaves you questioning coincidence, these are the fingerprints of a deeper reality. For centuries, mystics, shamans, and wisdom keepers have navigated these layers, uncovering truths that science is only beginning to touch. And here's the most fascinating part: you don't need special powers to tune into them. You've already felt their presence, even if you didn't have the words to explain it. So why do these dimensions matter? Because they hold the keys to unlocking a richer, more meaningful existence. Imagine realizing that every choice you make ripples across these unseen layers, or that the emotions you carry aren't just confined to your body. They're energy moving through a much larger tapestry. This isn't about escaping the physical world. It's about deepening your connection to it. Whether you're drawn to meditation, energy healing, or simply curious about the mysteries that science can't yet quantify, this journey into spiritual dimensions will change how you see yourself and the universe around you. Ready to explore? Let's begin. Spiritual dimensions are like the hidden currents beneath the ocean's surface, unseen, yet profoundly shaping the world we experience. Unlike the physical realm, bound by time, space, and the laws of physics, these dimensions operate on entirely different principles. Think of them as layers of reality, where energy, consciousness, and intention take center stage. In esoteric traditions, from Kabbalah's tree of life to the Hindu concept of locus, these dimensions aren't just theoretical, they're lived realities, each with its own vibrational frequency and unique properties. What makes them so fascinating is their non-linear nature. Time here doesn't move in a straight line. Past, present, and future can intertwine like threads in a tapestry. Have you ever had a dream that later unfolded in waking life, or a sudden knowing about something before it happened? These are glimpses into dimensions where time is fluid, and consciousness is the primary currency. Energy is another defining feature. While the physical world relies on tangible matter, spiritual dimensions are woven from subtler stuff. Think of it as the difference between a solid rock and the wind. In traditions like Taoism or Reiki, this energy called Kai or prana flows through all things, connecting beings and realms in an intricate web. It's why certain places feel sacred, or why you might sense a shift in the air during meditation. These dimensions aren't distant or separate. They're all around us, interacting with our reality in ways science is just beginning to map. Take near-death experiences, for example. Many who have crossed that threshold describe realms of pure light and love, where communication happens instantaneously, without words. This mirrors what mystics have long described: dimensions where thought manifests instantly, and separation is an illusion. Consciousness is the glue holding it all together. In these realms, your awareness isn't confined to your brain. It expands, becoming a creative force. The Tibetan Book of the Dead speaks of bardos, transitional states, where consciousness shapes reality like clay. Similarly, modern lucid dreamers report bending dreamscapes with a thought. This isn't fantasy. It's a clue to how these dimensions operate. They respond to intention, emotion, and focus, which is why rituals, prayers, or even deep meditation can act as gateways. Ever noticed how a strong emotion, love, grief, or awe, can alter your perception of reality? That's your consciousness brushing against these subtler layers. What's vital to understand is that these dimensions aren't escapes from the physical world. They're its underpinnings, the unseen scaffolding that gives rise to everything we know. The ancient Egyptians mapped the Duat, a spiritual realm mirroring the Nile's flow. Indigenous cultures speak of the Dreamtime, where creation stories live. Even quantum physics hints at entangled particles communicating faster than light, echoing the interconnectedness mystics describe. The more you explore this, the clearer it becomes. Spiritual dimensions aren't out there. They're the deeper rhythms of existence, waiting to be noticed, and once you start sensing them, nothing, not a sunset, a stranger's glance, or a quiet moment, feels ordinary again. Ancient civilizations didn't just ponder spiritual dimensions, they built entire worldviews around them. Take the Egyptians, who saw existence as a delicate balance between the physical and the unseen. Their Book of the Dead wasn't just a funeral text, it was a roadmap through the Duat, a layered afterlife realm where souls navigated trials, met deities, and ultimately merged with the light of Osiris. The Duat mirrored the Nile's cyclical flow. Death and rebirth weren't metaphors but daily realities. Even their architecture held these secrets. The pyramids weren't just tombs, they were vibrational gateways, aligning with stars like Orion to bridge earthly and cosmic realms. When a pharaoh died, rituals didn't just honor them, they activated a journey across dimensions. Then there's the Vedic tradition, where the Upanishads describe lokas, subtle worlds existing alongside our own. These weren't mythical heavens but vibratory planes. From Biloka, the physical, to Satyaloka, pure truth. The Rig Veda hints at this with hymns to Agni, the fire god who moved between realms as messenger. Yogas didn't just meditate, they trained to consciously travel these layers through practices like samadhi. The Taittiriya Upanishad even maps the human body's energy sheaths, koshas, each corresponding to a dimension of experience, from the food-fed physical body to the bliss body radiating beyond time. Kabbalah offers another lens with the Tree of Life, a blueprint of 10 Sephiroth emanations of divine energy. Each isn't a place but a state of consciousness, from Malkuth, earthly existence, to Kether, pure unity. Medieval Kabbalists didn't just study these, they used rituals like Tzaref, combining Hebrew letters to vibrate into higher dimensions. The Zohar describes angels not as winged beings, but as intelligences formed from structured light, operating in realms where thought and matter blur. Even everyday objects held multidimensional significance. A simple shawl worn during prayer wasn't fabric, but a vessel for crossing spiritual thresholds. What ties these traditions together? The understanding that dimensions aren't separate worlds, but frequencies of the same reality. The Egyptian Ankh symbolized life flowing between realms. Vedic mantras were sonic keys to unlock them. Kabbalistic meditation visualized divine light descending through the Sephiroth. These weren't abstract beliefs, but lived technology's tools to navigate existence's full spectrum. When a Tibetan monk creates a sand mandala, they're not making art, they're mapping cosmic architecture, then dissolving it to teach impermanence. Every ritual, every symbol was a bridge. Today, we might call this quantum physics or holographic theory, but ancients knew the veil is thin. Walk into a Gothic cathedral, and the vaulted arches pull your gaze upward, not just to heaven, but to the architects, knowing that sacred space bends dimensions. Light a candle in a Greek oracle's cave, and you're tapping into the same currents the Pythia used to channel Apollo. These cultures didn't have our technology, but they had something we're still rediscovering, a fluency in the language of the unseen. They're artifacts, not relics, but invitations, because when you hold an Egyptian scarab or chant a Vedic mantra, you're not just touching history, you're brushing against the timeless. The astral plane is like the hidden highway of consciousness, a vibrant, malleable dimension where thought takes shape and the boundaries of the physical world dissolve. Imagine stepping into a realm where you can fly through cities of light, converse with ancestors, or unravel the threads of past lives, all while your body rests quietly in bed. This isn't fantasy, it's the reality experienced by countless individuals through astral projection and lucid dreaming. In esoteric traditions, the astral plane isn't just one destination, it's the dynamic intersection where higher and lower dimensions meet, a crossroads of energy and awareness. Out-of-body experiences offer some of the clearest glimpses into this realm. Those who have consciously projected describe a silver cord tethering their astral body to the physical, a lifeline woven from pure energy. The sensations are vivid, weightlessness, a rush of wind, or the sudden ability to pass through walls. But what makes the astral plane so pivotal is its role as a training ground. Here, fears manifest as shadowy figures to be confronted, and desires materialize instantly, teaching a profound lesson about the power of thought. Ancient Egyptian priests called this the Jewet's antechamber, where souls faced tests before ascending. Modern projectors report similar archetypes, guides in luminous robes, libraries of Akashic records, or portals pulsing with colors beyond earthly spectrums. Lucid dreaming is another doorway. When you realize you're dreaming and seize control, you're tapping into the astral's outer layers. Tibetan monks have practiced this for centuries in dream yoga, using it to rehearse death and navigate the bardo states. In these dreams, physics bends to will. You might summon a storm with a whisper or meet deceased loved ones who feel more alive than in memory, the key difference. Astral projection often feels hyper-real, with a crystalline clarity that dreams lack, yet both share the astral signature, a realm where time folds and the subconscious becomes tangible. What truly sets the astral plane apart is its function as a bridge. Mystics describe it as the second subplane of the mental plane, a vibrational stepping stone. Theosophists like Alice Bailey mapped it as home to elementals, beings of fire, air, water, and earth, who sculpt reality from raw thought. Here, prayers take form as shimmering geometries, and emotions ripple outward like stones in a pond. It's why rituals across cultures, from Celtic seers to Amazonian shamans, aim to access this space. Even modern remote viewers, trained by governments to spy across distances, arguably tap into the astral's non-local nature. But the astral isn't just for adepts. You've likely brushed against it in moments of déjà vu, sleep paralysis, or that eerie sense of being watched, ever awakened with a solution to a problem or a melody in your head. The astral plane is where creativity whispers and intuition blazes. Artists, inventors, and mystics alike have drawn from its endless well. The composer Tartini dreamed of a devil playing a violin sonata and woke to transcribe it. Nikola Tesla credited visions of rotating machines to his breakthroughs. These aren't quirks of genius, they're proof of the astral's accessibility. Navigating it requires neither magic nor dogma, just awareness. Start by recording dreams. Patterns emerge. Try reality checks like reading text in dreams, which often scrambles. Meditation sharpens the focus needed to sustain projection. Even simple practices, like staring at a candle flame before bed, can thin the veil. The astral plane doesn't demand belief, only curiosity. And once you recognize its signs, the hum before sleep, the vortexes behind closed eyelids, you'll see it's not a distant dimension. It's the hidden current beneath every inspired thought, every uncanny coincidence, every night when the stars feel close enough to touch. The etheric dimension is like the blueprint of the physical world, a luminous web of energy that holds the shape of everything you see and touch. Picture a tree's roots spreading beneath the soil, unseen yet vital to its life. That's the etheric, an invisible scaffolding where life force, or prana, flows before it condenses into matter. This dimension isn't some distant realm. It's the layer closest to our physical bodies, often perceived as the aura, that shimmering halo of light clairvoyance described around living beings. Think of it as the body's energetic shadow, pulsating with vitality, mirroring every heartbeat, every thought, every surge of emotion. Chakras are the power stations within this etheric framework. These spinning vortices of energy, aligned along the spine, act as gateways between the physical and higher dimensions. Each chakra corresponds to specific aspects of our being, the root anchoring us to the earth, the crown opening to cosmic wisdom. When energy stagnates in one of these centers, it's like a kink in a garden hose, disrupting the flow to the physical body. That's why traditions like Ayurveda and acupuncture don't just treat flesh and bone. They work with this etheric anatomy to restore balance. A Reiki practitioner's hands hovering above your body, they're sensing these subtle currents, redirecting energy where it's needed most. Healers across cultures have interacted with this dimension for millennia. In Reiki, symbols drawn in the air aren't just gestures, they're vibrational keys that unlock blocks in the etheric body. The Japanese Katadama tradition teaches that certain sounds, like the Sei Hai Kai chant, can repair tears in this energetic fabric. Even modern technologies like Kirlian photography capture glimpses of the etheric, revealing glowing outlines around leaves and fingertips, proof that this dimension leaves traces science can almost grasp. Those with clairvoyant sight describe the etheric in vivid detail, a mesh of golden threads, swirling colors shifting with mood, or dark patches where illness takes root. Edgar Cayce, the famed psychic, spoke of reading the etheric body like a book, diagnosing ailments before physical symptoms appeared, but you don't need psychic gifts to sense it. Ever walked into a room and felt tension so thick it seemed to hum? That's the etheric dimension reacting to collective energy. Or noticed how some people seem to glow with health, while others appear drained? That's the etheric body broadcasting its state. What makes this dimension so pivotal is its role as a bridge. It translates higher spiritual energies into forms the physical body can use, like a transformer stepping down voltage. When you meditate, visualizing light filling your aura isn't just imagination. It's a conscious interaction with the etheric. Yogis who practice pranayama aren't just breathing air. They're directing etheric energy through nadis, the body's subtle channels. Even simple acts like grounding barefoot on grass or smudging with sage cleanse this layer, resetting its vibratory rhythm. The etheric dimension reminds us that healing isn't just about fixing the body. It's about tending to the invisible architecture that sustains it. When a Qigong master moves stagnant energy or a sound bath's vibrations realign your field, they're working in this realm. It's the reason placebos can trigger real recovery. Belief shifts the etheric, which then nudges the physical. This dimension doesn't obey the rules of mainstream science, but it's as real as the wind you feel but cannot see. And the more you attune to it, through breath, intention, or quiet observation, the more you'll sense the living pulse of energy that connects every cell, every thought, every moment of your existence. The mental dimension is where thoughts take on weight and shape. Becoming more than fleeting whispers in the mind, they crystallize into structures that influence reality itself. Imagine standing in a vast library, but instead of books, the shelves are lined with shimmering, pulsating forms made of pure thought. Some glow brightly, charged with clarity and intention, while others flicker weakly, tangled by doubt or fear. This is the essence of the mental plane, a realm where ideas aren't abstract but tangible forces, sculpting the unseen fabric of existence. In Theosophy, This is the domain of the mental body, the aspect of our consciousness that operates beyond the limitations of the physical brain, weaving the blueprints for what eventually manifests in our lives. Every belief you hold, every assumption you carry, exists here as a living entity. Think of it like this: when you repeatedly dwell on a thought, whether it's "I am capable" or "I'll never succeed," you're not just reinforcing a neural pathway in your brain. You're building a thought form, a condensed energy structure that gains strength with each repetition. Theosophist Annie Besant described these as elementals, beings forged from mental and emotional energy that can influence both the creator and others around them. Ever walked into a room where an argument just happened and felt the tension lingering, almost like a haze? That's the residue of thought forms, clinging to the environment long after the words were spoken. Collective consciousness amplifies this phenomenon exponentially. When millions of people focus on a shared idea, whether it's a prayer, a cultural myth, or even a viral trend, their combined mental energy creates a powerful egregore. These are collective thought forms, entities sustained by group belief. Consider how national flags stir deep emotions, or how religious icons seem to radiate presence. These aren't just symbols, they're charged mental constructs, fed by centuries of devotion or conviction. Even modern media thrives on this principle. Advertising doesn't just sell products, it implants thought forms of desire into the mental dimension, which then ripple into behavior. The mental plane also explains synchronicities, those uncanny coincidences that feel too perfect to be random. When you deeply contemplate a question or desire, your mental body broadcasts that intention into this dimension, attracting resonant energies. It's like tuning a radio to a specific frequency. Jung called this meaningful causality, but mystics have long known it as the law of attraction in its purest form. The key difference: on the mental plane, time and space don't operate linearly. A thought sent out today might intersect with an opportunity months later, creating the illusion of chance when it's actually the architecture of consciousness aligning. Mastering this dimension starts with awareness. Meditation isn't just about quieting the mind, it's about observing the quality of your thoughts and pruning the ones that no longer serve you. Visualization practices, like picturing your goals as already achieved, aren't mere positive thinking, they're acts of mental architecture, drafting blueprints in the subtle realm before they solidify here. Even simple habits, like speaking affirmations aloud, gain power from the vibrational resonance they create in the mental dimension. The most profound implication: you're already shaping this realm every moment, whether you realize it or not. Every worry, every daydream, every moment of focused creativity adds to the tapestry of your mental body. And just as a cluttered room feels chaotic, a cluttered mental dimension scatters your energy. But when you consciously direct your thoughts, when you choose clarity over chaos, compassion over judgment, you're not just thinking. You're building the unseen foundations of the life you'll eventually inhabit. Beyond the flickering thoughts of the mental dimension lies a realm of such stillness and depth that it's been called the memory of the universe, the causal plane. This isn't just another layer of existence. It's the sacred vault where your soul's eternal wisdom resides, untouched by the noise of daily life. Imagine standing at the edge of an infinite ocean at midnight, where every ripple holds the echo of 1,000 lifetimes. Every wave carries the blueprint of who you've been and who you're becoming. That's the causal dimension, the silent architect behind your deepest intuitions, the sudden knowing that arrives without explanation, and the inexplicable pull towards certain people or places that feel like home. In esoteric traditions, this plane is known as the home of the higher self, the part of you that exists beyond time. While your personality navigates the physical world, your higher self observes from this vast, luminous space, weaving lessons from past lives into the fabric of your current journey. Those flashes of déjà vu when you meet someone for the first time, but feel an ancient familiarity, or the dream where you're living another life in a different era, so vivid it lingers for days. These are whispers from the causal plane, where all your incarnations exist simultaneously like chapters in a book your soul is writing. The Tibetan concept of the rainbow body, where enlightened masters dissolve into light, hints at this dimension's nature. It's not a place you go after death. It's the timeless ground of being that's always been there, waiting for you to remember. Past life memories aren't mere curiosities here. They're active guides. A child who recalls detailed historical events they've never studied, or an adult who conquers a lifelong phobia after uncovering its origin in a regression session. These aren't accidents. They're the causal dimension gently rewiring present challenges with wisdom from other lifetimes. The Vedas describe this as the Karana Sharira, the causal body, a vessel of pure potential where karma and dharma are balanced before manifesting in physical form. When you feel an unshakable calling toward a purpose that defies logic, or when synchronicities align so perfectly, it feels like the universe is conspiring in your favor. That's your higher self orchestrating from this plane, pulling threads from across time to nudge you toward growth. Spiritual awakenings often begin here, that moment when a meditator dissolves into pure awareness, or when grief cracks someone open to reveal a love that transcends death. These are encounters with the causal dimension's boundless truth. Near-death experiencers frequently describe meeting a being of light who shows them their life's tapestry, where every joy and sorrow interlocks with divine precision. This isn't metaphor, it's the causal plane's language, where linear time collapses into meaning. Even scientists edge toward this understanding with theories like biocentrism, suggesting consciousness creates time rather than the other way around. Accessing this realm doesn't require esoteric rituals, just surrender. In deep meditation, when the chatter of the mind finally stills, the causal dimension announces itself as a presence far wiser than your thinking self. Mystics call it the voice of silence, the intuition that speaks not in words but in resonances. You might encounter it as a sudden solution to a problem that felt unsolvable, or as a dream where a departed loved one delivers a message that shifts your perspective forever. The key is recognizing that this dimension isn't out there. It's the deepest layer of your own awareness, the part of you that remembers how to breathe underwater, how to shine in the dark, how to love without fear. And when you touch it, even briefly, you'll never again mistake yourself for just a body or a mind. You'll know viscerally, irreversibly, that you're a soul wearing a human experience, dancing across dimensions while your higher self smiles, whispering, "You're right on time." The Buddhic dimension isn't just another layer of existence. It's the radiant heart of reality itself, where love ceases to be an emotion and becomes the very air you breathe. Imagine standing at the center of 1,000 suns, not burning but dissolving into their light, feeling no separation between your being and the glow that surrounds you. This is the realm mystics call the plane of intuition, or the Christ consciousness, where the illusion of individuality melts into a love so vast it defies description. In Sufi poetry, it's the wine of divine union that intoxicated Rumi, where lover and beloved are revealed as one. Advaita Vedanta points here when it whispers, Tat Tivam Esi, thou art that not as philosophy, but as lived truth. This dimension doesn't deal in fragments or hierarchies. It knows only wholeness. Unconditional love here isn't the sentimental version we often speak of. It's a force as precise as gravity, pulling all things toward unity. Christian mystics like Hildegard of Bingen described it as caritas, a divine current that moves the sun and the other stars. In Tibetan Buddhism, it's bodhicitta, the awakened heart-mind that perceives all beings as inseparable from oneself. When Mother Teresa spoke of seeing Christ in the dying, or when Baha'u'llah wrote of loving even one's enemies, for God's sake, they were pointing to this Buddhic frequency. It's the love that doesn't ask why or deserves. It simply recognizes itself in everything. A Zen master bows to a weed. A Sufi whirls until the ego shatters, leaving only the dance. These aren't rituals, but doorways into a dimension where love is the substance of existence. The Buddhic plane reveals a startling paradox. The more you dissolve into this love, the more yourself you become. Saints and sages across traditions report the same experience, not annihilation, but homecoming. The Hindu bhakti poet Mirabai sang to Krishna not as another, but as her own soul unveiled. The Gnostic Gospel of Thomas declares, "The kingdom of God is inside you." Even quantum physics edges toward this truth with entanglement, where particles instantly mirror each other across galaxies. In the Buddhic dimension, this interconnectedness isn't theory. It's immediate, tactile. You don't believe we're one. You experience the blade of grass and the mountain as your own body. Accessing this realm isn't about effort but surrender. Unlike the astral or mental planes, where will and focus are keys, the Buddhic dimension opens when striving ceases. The Christian Desert Fathers called it hesychia, stillness so complete that the prayer of the heart arises on its own. Taoist sages spoke of wu-wei, non-doing, where alignment with the Tao happens like a leaf floating on a river. Even modern neuroscience hints at this. When long-term meditators' brains shift into gamma-wave synchrony, they describe states indistinguishable from the Buddhic utter clarity wrapped in boundless compassion. Yet this dimension isn't reserved for ascetics. Every time you felt a love so deep it erased fear, holding a newborn, grieving a loss that somehow opened your heart wider, or even locking eyes with a stranger and sensing a wordless understanding, you've brushed against the Buddhic. It's why trauma survivors who forgive their attackers often speak not of magnanimity, but of liberation. They've touched a plane where grievances can't survive. The mystic Kabir put it bluntly, when the drop falls into the ocean, who can find it again? The Buddhic dimension is that ocean, and the drop is every boundary we thought was real. To walk this world with Buddhic awareness is to see through the eyes of the mystics, the beggar and the king as facets of one jewel, hatred as love's distorted echo, and every act of cruelty as a cry for remembrance. It's not passive, it's fiercely engaged. When Gandhi said, "Be the change," he wasn't urging action from the ego, but alignment with this dimension's truth. Here, service isn't sacrifice. It's the joy of a hand recognizing it's part of the body. The Buddhic dimension doesn't remove you from life. It plunges you into its depths, where every moment shimmers with the unbearable beauty of a love that has no opposite. The Atmic dimension is where the soul steps beyond the dance of love and light into the raw, unfiltered pulse of divine will. This isn't about surrender or ecstasy anymore. It's the realm where pure spirit aligns with the universe's deepest directives, like a flame merging with the wind that shapes it. Think of it as the cosmic forge, where the highest purpose is hammered into being. In Theosophy, this is the plane of Atma, the true will that transcends even the Buddhic plane's unity. Here, individuality isn't dissolved, but exalted not as ego, but as a unique instrument of the Absolute. Alice Bailey called it the plane of the divine plan, where masters of wisdom work not with emotions or thoughts, but with the unshakable currents of spiritual volition. Ascension traditions across cultures whisper of this dimension's power. In the Egyptian mysteries, the pharaoh's coronation wasn't just political. It was an attunement to the Atmic will, symbolized by the flail and crook tools to wield divine authority. The Hindu concept of Ikha Shakti, the power of intention, mirrors this, a force so potent that sages like Patanjali taught it could halt rivers or vanish mountains. Even the Kabbalistic idea of Ratzon, divine will, points here not as submission, but as co-creation. When Moses struck the rock and water flowed, or when Jesus stilled the storm, these weren't miracles in the mundane sense. They were demonstrations of Atmic alignment, where human will harmonized with the universe's blueprint. What sets the Atmic dimension apart is its razor focus. While the Buddhic plane bathes in love's ocean, the Atmic plane is the lightning within the storm, directed, purposeful, unstoppable. Bailey's writings describe the Great White Lodge, a collective of ascended beings who work here, shaping civilizations not through force, but by implanting seeds of divine intention into the collective consciousness. Ever wondered how certain ideas like democracy or human rights seem to arise simultaneously across disconnected cultures? That's the Atmic plane's fingerprint, where will cascades into history like a silent thunderclap. Practical mysticism reveals this dimension's presence in daily life. Have you ever met someone whose mere presence radiates an almost magnetic sense of purpose? Or felt a sudden, unshakable resolve to take a leap despite logic screaming otherwise? These are whispers of the Atmic will cutting through the noise. The Japanese term ikigai touches this, the intersection of passion, mission, and vocation that feels less like choice and more like destiny in motion. It's why artists like Michelangelo could look at a block of marble and see David inside, or why activists like Mandela endured decades of imprisonment without bitterness. Their wills were anchored in something beyond personal desire. To engage with this dimension isn't about affirmations or effort. It begins with stillness, not to dissolve the self, but to listen for the deeper rhythm beneath thoughts and emotions. Meditation here isn't about emptying the mind. It's about attuning to the subtle pressures of spirit, like a sailor sensing shifts in the wind. The Rosicrucians spoke of knowing, daring, willing, and keeping silent, a formula for Atmic work. First, know your true desire beyond ego, then dare to act on it. Will it into being with unwavering focus. Finally, keep silent, not out of secrecy, but because the Atmic dimension's power thrives beyond words, in the quiet where intention crystallizes. The Atmic plane reminds us that enlightenment isn't just about peace or love. It's about wielding the creative fire of existence itself. When a shaman dances the world into being, or a scientist like Marie Curie sacrifices health to uncover radium's secrets, they're not just serving humanity. They're answering a call etched into their souls long before birth. This dimension doesn't promise ease. Its path often demands the courage to stand alone, like a mountain peak touching the sky while storms rage below. But for those who dare to align, life ceases to be something that happens to you. It becomes something you co-author with the universe, stroke by deliberate stroke. While the seven-dimensional model offers a profound framework for understanding spiritual realities, some traditions stretch even further, proposing architectures of existence with 12 or more layers. These expansive maps don't contradict the simpler systems. Instead, they zoom in, revealing finer gradations of consciousness. Take the 12-dimensional model, often linked to modern channeled teachings like those of the Pleiadians or the Arcturians. Here, dimensions aren't just stacked like floors in a building, they intertwine, each influencing the others in a dynamic dance. The lower dimensions 1 through 7 align closely with classical esoteric maps, but beyond them, things get fascinatingly intricate. The 8th dimension introduces the concept of morphogenetic fields, cosmic blueprints that shape galaxies, species, even collective ideologies. It's where the original thought of a hummingbird's wing or a human emotion exists before it manifests. The 9th dimension, that's where timelines branch like a boundless tree, holding every possible version of reality. This isn't science fiction. It's a logical extension of quantum physics multiverse theory, framed in spiritual terms. Compare this to the Kabbalistic tree of life, which also hints at higher layers beyond the 10 Sephiroth. Dad, the hidden 11th Sephira, represents a threshold, not a place, but a state of pure knowing, where dualities collapse into unity. Some Kabbalists speak of the 5 worlds beyond Asaya, the physical, each corresponding to subtler dimensions where divine light grows increasingly concentrated. Similarly, Hindu cosmology's 14 lokas include realms like Tapaloka, where beings of pure creative will reside, and Satyaloka, the plane of absolute truth beyond form. These aren't competing systems, but different lenses on the same truth. Existence is a spectrum, and what we call dimensions are simply markers along that continuum. What's striking about 12-dimensional models is their emphasis on co-creation. While the 7-dimensional system focuses on personal ascension, the higher tiers, 10 through 12, describe our role as cosmic architects. The 10th dimension is where individual souls merge into planetary consciousness. Think of it as Gaia's own awareness. 11th dimension, that's where collective human destiny is shaped, where archetypes like the wounded healer or revolutionary are born into the group's psyche. The 12th dimension is pure source, the unmanifest womb from which all dimensions spring. Metaphorically, if the 7-dimensional system teaches you to navigate the river, the 12-dimensional map shows you how the river was carved and how to help shape its future course. These frameworks aren't about hierarchy but function. A shaman working with ancestral spirits in the 4th dimension and a mystic contemplating the 12th are both accessing truth, just at different resolutions. It's like comparing a painter's brushstroke to the chemist's study of pigment. One isn't better. They serve different purposes. The 12-dimensional model excels in describing how collective evolution happens, why humanity's shifts in consciousness ripple across epochs. When thousands meditate for peace simultaneously, they're not just sending goodwill into the astral plane. They're tweaking the morphogenetic fields of the 8th, which then filter down to reshape physical reality. Yet all these models agree on one thing: dimensions aren't places to visit but aspects of your own awareness waiting to be awakened. Whether you resonate more with 7, 12, or infinite layers, the invitation is the same: to explore, to remember, and ultimately, to realize that the cosmos's grand design is also your own. Beyond the familiar boundaries of human perception, countless traditions speak of beings who navigate dimensions we can scarcely imagine, entities that exist not as myths, but as living intelligences operating in realms just beyond our sight. Angels, ascended masters, extraterrestrial guides, these aren't just archetypes or wishful thinking. Many who have encountered them, from near-death experiencers to lifelong mystics, describe interactions so vivid and transformative that they defy reduction to hallucinations or metaphor. Take the accounts of those who have clinically died and returned, reporting encounters with luminous beings radiating unconditional love. Often, these entities communicate not with words, but through direct transmissions of knowing, imparting wisdom that reshapes lives in an instant. One man, after a cardiac arrest, described meeting a being of liquid light who showed him his life's ripple effects, how a single act of kindness in 1978 had catalyzed a chain reaction he'd never witnessed. Then there are the ascended masters figures like Kuan Yin, Saint Germain, or Melchizedek, who traditions say have evolved beyond the cycle of rebirth, yet remain accessible to guide humanity. Theosophist Helena Blavatsky wrote of the Mahatmas, hidden adepts in the Himalayas, who could project their consciousness across continents. Modern channelers often describe similar contacts, receiving teachings that blend timeless truths with urgent relevance for today's crises. But here's what's fascinating. Whether these communications come through meditation, dreams, or spontaneous visions, the message rarely centers on worship. Instead, it echoes a consistent theme awakening to our own multidimensional nature. A woman in Brazil who channels an entity calling itself Amen shares dialogues where the being insists, "We are not above you, we are beside you in the spiral, a few turns ahead." Extraterrestrial guides add another layer to this tapestry. While pop culture reduces them to gray aliens or invaders, contactees like those in Peru's Andes Mountains speak of the Antero, tall, azure-haired beings who teach about Earth's energetic grid. Aboriginal elders, meanwhile, recount the Wandjina sky beings who shaped landscapes and laws. The common thread: these encounters often trigger expansions in consciousness. A retired schoolteacher in Minnesota, after a close encounter, suddenly began seeing auras and intuitively healing animals, abilities she'd never sought. Skeptics dismiss such stories, but the sheer volume of cross-cultural consistency gives pause. From the Dogon tribe's serious lore to modern-day UFO connectees, the narrative rarely involves conquest. Instead, it's one of stewardship, with beings emphasizing humanity's role in a cosmic ecosystem. What's crucial to understand is that these entities aren't uniform. Just as humans range from healers to hackers, interdimensional beings exhibit vast diversity. Some near-death experiencers report life reviews overseen by councils of elders. Shamans speak of trickster spirits who test their discernment. Even within angelic lore, distinctions emerge. Archangels like Michael resonate as warrior frequencies, while Raphael vibrates as healing green-gold light. The key isn't blind belief but conscious engagement. As psychic researcher Rosalind Monite learned through her work with the CA's Stargate project, the higher the dimension, the more these beings operate through synchronicity and sacred geometry, not dramatic apparitions. They're less likely to appear in your bedroom than to nudge you toward a book, a stranger's advice, or a sudden insight that rearranges your understanding of reality. Perhaps the most profound takeaway is this: these beings reflect aspects of our own potential. When a yogi communes with the goddess Kali, or a child sees a winged figure during a car crash, it's not about dependency, it's a mirror. The same light that forms an angel's wings pulses in our DNA. The wisdom channeled from ascended masters echoes our soul's ancient memories. Even the UFO phenomenon takes on new meaning when viewed through this lens. Jacques Vallée, the astrophysicist who inspired close encounters of the third kind, concluded after decades of study that these encounters serve as control mechanisms to evolve consciousness. They're not here to save or enslave us, but to provoke the question: if they exist, what does that make us? The invitation, then, isn't to chase visions, but to cultivate the sensibilities that make such contact natural: deep presence, open-hearted discernment, and above all, the courage to acknowledge that reality is far stranger and far more alive than we've been taught. Whether you felt a whisper during meditation or simply wonder about the flicker at the edge of your vision, this much is certain: the cosmos teems with intelligences waiting not to be believed in, but to be conversed with. And the language they speak isn't of words, but of resonance. Certain places on Earth hum with an energy so palpable, even skeptics feel it. Spots where the veil between dimensions wears thin, where the air itself seems charged with possibility. These are portals and vortexes, nature's own doorways bridging the physical and spiritual realms. Picture standing in Sedona's red rock canyons as the desert wind carries not just sand, but whispers from another layer of reality. Or walking the labyrinth at Chartres Cathedral, where medieval builders encoded sacred geometry into stone, creating a funnel for divine energy. These aren't just poetic metaphors, they're living interfaces where dimensional boundaries soften, allowing energy, consciousness, and even beings to cross. Natural vortexes like those in Sedona or Mount Shasta arise from Earth's ley lines, invisible energy highways where the planet's magnetic field concentrates. Geologists measure anomalies here, compasses spin erratically, and cameras capture orbs of light science can't explain. But the real magic lies in the subjective experience. Visitors describe sudden clarity, emotional releases, or visions of ancestors in these zones. A nurse from Colorado hiking Boynton Canyon swore she glimpsed a doorway of light, stepping through to a desert lush with vegetation only to blink and find herself back on the trail. Indigenous Hopi elders call these sites sipapas, cosmic entry points, where their people emerged into this world. The vortex isn't just a spiritual idea. It's a spiraling force that mirrors the Fibonacci sequence in nature, pulling consciousness into higher frequencies like a celestial whirlpool. Sacred sites take this further, often built atop natural portals through ritual amplification. Stonehenge's megaliths align not just with solstices, but with interdimensional crossroads, acting as a stargate for Druid priests. Tibet's Mount Kailash, forbidden to climbers, is said to house the entrance to Shambhala, a hidden kingdom vibrating at a frequency invisible to ordinary perception. Even modern pilgrims report time distortions there. Watches stop, and hours feel like minutes. These locations share a secret. They're tuned to Earth's resonant frequency of 7.83 Hz, the same theta rhythm our brains emit during deep meditation or lucid dreaming. It's as if the planet offers harmonic doorways where human and cosmic rhythms sync, unlocking perceptual gates. Rituals act as keys to these doorways. The Aboriginal songline's ancient pathways mapped through sacred chants aren't just navigation tools. They're vibrational codes that activate portals when sung correctly. Similarly, Egyptian priests performed the opening of the mouth ceremony not just to animate statues, but to anchor higher dimensional consciousness into physical form. Today's mystics use similar principles. Tibetan monks blow conch shells to shatter dimensional barriers, while Amazonian shamans brew ayahuasca, a brew that philosopher Wade Davis notes dissolves the ego's walls like rain on a spiderweb. These practices share a truth. Portals respond to intentional energy. Sound, sacred geometry, and altered states aren't just methods. They're the tuning forks that resonate with hidden frequencies. Science edges toward validating this. Quantum physics acknowledges wormholes, theoretical bridges between dimensions. Places like Sedona's Cathedral Rock exhibit measurable gravitational anomalies that mirror these models. Researcher Dr. Klaus Heinemann's experiments with photon imaging reveal structured light patterns at vortex sites, suggesting an intelligence behind the energy. Meanwhile, the Global Consciousness Project detected spikes in random number generators during mass meditations at sacred sites, as if collective focus bends the fabric of local reality. The implications are staggering. These portals may be less about travel and more about awakening latent human capacities, remote viewing, healing, or precognition that thrive in heightened energy fields. To engage with these gateways requires no special creed, only awareness. Start by noticing where your body tingles or your mind quietens in nature, a lone oak, a seaside cliff. These subtle vortexes exist everywhere. Placing hands on stones at Overbury or humming in a canyon can trigger shifts, not because the act is magical, but because it signals your readiness to interact. The portals were never hidden. We just forgot how to see. As the Dagara elder Malidoma Samay once told me, the other world isn't far away. It's pressing against this one, waiting for you to notice the cracks. And when you do, the ordinary becomes a crossroads, every breath a potential passage. Physics and spirituality might seem like distant realms, one clad in lab coats, the other in mystic robes, but dig a little deeper, and you'll find them whispering the same secrets in different languages. Take string theory, the cutting edge of modern physics, which proposes that reality isn't made of particles, but vibrating strings, each note composing a different dimension. Sound familiar? It's the scientific echo of the ancient Hindu concept of Nada Brahma, the universe as sound, vibration, the primordial OM, or consider quantum entanglement, where particles separated by galaxies mirror each other instantly, defying space and time. This isn't just a lab curiosity. It's the same interconnectedness Tibetan Buddhists describe as Indra's net, a cosmic web where every jewel reflects all others. Science is now catching up to what mystics have known for millennia. Reality is far weirder. and far more alive than our senses suggest. The parallels grow even starker with higher dimensional math. Theoretical physicist Michio Kaku speaks of an 11-dimensional universe, 10 of space, 1 of time, where gravity leaks into our world from other dimensions. Compare that to the Kabbalistic tree of life, with its 10 Sephiroth plus the hidden Dad, a blueprint of creation mapping how divine energy cascades through layered realms. Even more striking, the brain cosmology of string theory suggests our universe might be a membrane floating in a higher dimensional bulk, brushing against others like sheets in the wind. It's uncannily close to shamanic visions of Earth as one layer in a stack of worlds, each vibrating at different frequencies. The Maya called these the 9 underworlds. Modern physics might call them brains. The vocabulary differs, but the architecture nearly identical. Quantum mechanics adds another layer of mystery. Particles exist as probabilities until observed, a phenomenon Einstein called spooky action at a distance. But this collapse of the wave function mirrors what yogis describe when they say consciousness shapes reality. In the double-slit experiment, electrons behave as waves or particles, depending on whether they're watched. Meditators have long claimed that focused awareness alters matter. Now labs show it might literally bend light. Then there's the zero-point field, the quantum vacuum teeming with infinite energy. To physicists, it's a mathematical necessity. To mystics, it's the akasha, the subtle substrate recording all events, the same field Edgar Cayce tapped for psychic readings. Even time, that rigid arrow in classical physics, bends in both realms. Einstein proved it's relative, flowing slower near massive objects. Near-death experiencers report timelines collapsing, reviewing their lives in a blink. The Tralgpa monks of Bhutan speak of zigzag time, where past and future ripple through the present like stones in a pond. And while science fiction loves parallel universes, physicists like Hugh Everett Roman III treat them seriously. His multiverse theory posits infinite versions of you making every possible choice. Compare that to the Tibetan Bardo, where consciousness navigates alternate realities between deaths. The language differs, but the insight is the same. Existence is a hall of mirrors, and you're the light bouncing between them. What's thrilling isn't just that science validates spirituality. It's that both point toward a reality where consciousness isn't an accident, but the cornerstone. Biocentrism, proposed by scientist Robert Lanza, argues that life creates the universe, not the other way around. The Upanishads said this millennia ago, Tat Tvam Esi, you are that. The implications are staggering. If consciousness shapes dimensions, then mystical practices, meditation, prayer, ritual aren't just metaphors. They're technologies for navigating the multiverse. A quantum physicist manipulates equations to explore higher dimensions. A Sufi whirls to dissolve into them. Different methods, same destination. This convergence isn't about reducing one to the other. Science needs rigor. Spirituality thrives on direct experience. But together, they form a mosaic where the Big Bang meets the cosmic serpent, where dark matter dances with the Tao. Perhaps the most profound takeaway is this: the more we probe reality's edges, the less supernatural the mystical becomes. Those whispered intuitions, those synchronicities that jolt your spine, they're not glitches in the matrix. They're glimpses of the dimensions physics is just beginning to map. And if the ancients and the scientists agree on one thing, it's this: we've barely scratched reality's surface. Altered states of consciousness have long been humanity's secret passageways into the unseen tools, as ancient as stargazing and as modern as neurofeedback. Imagine sitting in deep meditation when suddenly the boundary between your body and the room dissolves, and you're floating in a sea of golden light. Or drinking a ceremonial brew in the Amazon, only to find yourself conversing with serpentine beings who speak in colors. These aren't hallucinations in the dismissive sense. They're direct encounters with dimensions that our ordinary awareness filters out. From Buddhist monks achieving jhana states to Silicon Valley executives microdosing psilocybin, the methods vary, but the destination is the same: a temporary loosening of the mind's grip, allowing the spiritual layers of reality to come into focus. Meditation is the gentlest of these keys, a slow, steady tuning of the mind's frequency. Advanced practitioners describe reaching samadhi, a state where the meditator and the object of focus merge into pure awareness. Neuroscience catches glimpses of this. EEG readings of seasoned meditators show gamma waves synchronizing across the brain, a pattern linked to heightened perception and unity consciousness. Tibetan monks in deep Dzogchen practice report perceiving turgle visions, spontaneous appearances of deities and mandalas, not as projections, but as interdimensional realities intersecting with their own. The irony: this isn't about adding anything to your experience. It's about subtracting the noise of everyday thought to reveal what's always been there. Psychedelics, by contrast, are the rocket boosters of dimensional exploration. Compounds like DMT, found in ayahuasca, don't just alter perception, they obliterate the illusion of separation entirely. A Johns Hopkins study mapped brain activity during psilocybin trips, expecting chaos. Instead, they found a hyper-connected brain with regions that normally never speak suddenly in deep dialogue. Users describe entering fractal cities, meeting machine elves who rearrange their DNA, or reliving past lives with cinematic clarity. But here's the catch: these substances aren't party tricks. Indigenous cultures treat them as sacraments, wrapped in rituals that ground the experience in meaning and protection. An unguided trip can just as easily plunge you into shadow realms of unresolved trauma as it can lift you to ecstatic heights. The difference between a healing journey and a nightmare often lies in set and setting, your mindset and the environment you're in. Shamanic journeys offer a third path, blending intention with ancestral wisdom. In the Mongolian steppes, Bur shamans drum themselves into trances, their spirits riding the rhythm to the lower world to retrieve lost soul fragments. The Shipibo people of Peru sing Icaro's melodies handed down through generations to navigate the spirit realms during ayahuasca ceremonies. What's striking is the consistency of these reports across cultures. Whether it's the Celtic seers breathing in peat smoke or Huichol shamans' peyote pilgrims, they all describe Axis Mundi, the world tree connecting earth to heavens. Modern hypnotherapy echoes this in past life regressions, where clients access memories that historians later verify. These aren't fantasies, they're evidence of consciousness slipping its leash. Yet with great power comes great responsibility and risk. Not all dimensions are benevolent. Tibetan Buddhists warn of the bardo's seductive illusions, where radiant beings might be ego's last trick. Psychedelic voyagers occasionally bring back psychic attachments, like the man who swore a shadow entity followed him home from a DD trip. Even meditation can unearth buried trauma too quickly, a phenomenon dubbed spiritual emergency. That's why traditions emphasize preparation, cleansing diets, protective mantras, or grounding practices to anchor the traveler. Ethics matter too. Indigenous communities fight the theft of their ceremonies by wellness tourists seeking Instagrammable epiphanies. Real dimensional work isn't about escapism. It's about bringing back wisdom to heal ourselves and the world. So how to explore safely? Start small. Mindfulness can open microportals, those moments when a sunset suddenly feels infinite, or a stranger's eyes seem to hold galaxies. If venturing further, seek guides who have walked the path before, whether they're meditation teachers, trained trip sitters, or initiated shamans, and always integrate the experience afterward. A vision of oneness means little if it doesn't translate into kinder actions at the grocery store. The ultimate goal isn't just to visit these dimensions, but to embody their truths, but to live as if the veil were already thin, because in the end, it always was. Have you ever glanced at the clock exactly as it flipped to 11:11, then turned on the radio to hear your favorite song playing, the one you'd just been humming in the shower? Or walked into a stranger's home and felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if you'd stood in that very spot lifetimes ago? These aren't just odd coincidences, they're potential breadcrumbs left by the universe, subtle hints that you're brushing against realities beyond the one you know. Synchronicities, those moments when events align with uncanny precision, are one of the most common signs of dimensional overlap. Carl Jung saw them as meaningful coincidences, but they are far more than that. When a friend calls the instant you think of them, or a book falls open to the exact page answering your unspoken question, you're witnessing the threads that stitch dimensions together. The numbers on receipts, license plates, or digital clocks repeat not because the universe is playing tricks, but because your consciousness is momentarily tuned to a frequency where time and meaning weave differently. Déjà vu is another whisper from the unseen, a sudden, unshakable sense that you've lived this moment before. Science often chalks it up to a neural misfire, but those who have experienced it deeply know it's more. It's the eerie certainty that you've walked this path, spoken these words, in some other version of reality. Some traditions believe it's a glimmer of past life memories breaking through, while others suggest it's your future self sending back reassurance. Whatever the cause, that spine-tingling recognition is a fleeting glimpse into the fluid nature of time itself. And then there are those dreams that arrive with cinematic clarity, visions of places you've never visited, only to stumble upon them months later in waking life. These aren't prophecies. They're evidence that your sleeping mind occasionally slips through the seams of ordinary reality, scouting ahead like a cosmic compass. Ghostly encounters and shadow figures often get dismissed as superstition, but consider this: what if they're not ghosts in the traditional sense, but beings or energies momentarily visible as they pass through our vibrational plane? A flicker of movement in the corner of your eye, a cold spot in a sun-warmed room, or the unmistakable sense of being watched when no one's there. These could be traces of entities existing just out of phase with our dimension. Even electronics acting strangely, lights flickering, devices turning on by themselves might not be faulty wiring. They could be energy from overlapping realms interacting with our physical world. The key isn't to fear these moments, but to recognize them for what they are: reminders that reality is far more porous than we've been taught. But how do you navigate these experiences without losing your footing? Grounding is essential. When synchronicities pile up or an encounter leaves you shaken, reconnect with the earth, walk barefoot on grass, press your palms to a tree's bark, or simply breathe deeply while imagining roots extending from your feet into the soil. Salt, a timeless protector, can help. A pinch sprinkled around your space or dissolved in bath water acts as an energetic reset. For persistent phenomena, black tourmaline or smoky quartz can anchor stray energies. And if the unseen becomes overwhelming, speak aloud. Only what serves my highest good may remain. Boundaries matter, even across dimensions. The most profound tool, though, is curiosity. Next time you spot a repeating number or catch a whisper on empty air, pause. Ask gently, "What are you showing me?" The answers might not come in words. A sudden insight, a warm breeze, or a song looping in your mind could be the reply. These phenomena aren't disruptions to normal life. They're invitations to remember that the mystical isn't separate from the mundane. It's the hidden melody beneath the noise of everyday existence, waiting for you to lean in and listen. Even the brightest light casts shadows, and the spiritual cosmos is no exception. Beyond the luminous planes of love and unity exist dimensions that vibrate at lower frequencies, realms often depicted in myth as underworlds, shadowlands, or prisons for fallen angels. These aren't realms of evil in the simplistic sense. but rather crucibles where consciousness confronts its own fragmentation. Think of them as cosmic mirrors, reflecting the unhealed, unresolved aspects of existence. The Tibetan Bardo Thurdal describes terrifying visions after death not as punishment, but as projections of the psyche's own fears. Similarly, the Kabbalistic Qliphoth represents the shells or inversions of the divine Sephiroth, where energy stagnates into dense, distorted forms. These dimensions serve a purpose. They're the spiritual equivalent of a forge's heat, burning away illusion so the soul can emerge refined. Entities inhabiting these realms range from thought forms born of collective trauma to ancient intelligences that feed on discord. Ever walked into a room where an argument left the air feeling thick, or met someone whose presence inexplicably drains your energy? These could be glimpses of lower dimensional interactions. Parasitic entities aren't the horned demons of folklore. They're often amorphous, clinging to unresolved anger, addiction, or grief like mold to dampness. A recovering alcoholic might sense them as cravings whispering relapse. A person drowning in self-doubt might feel them as a weight pressing on their chest. The Haitian Vodou tradition recognizes this dynamic, teaching that Baka spirits amplify negativity to sustain themselves, while Amazonian shamans speak of sustos, soul fragments lost to trauma, leaving voids where shadows gather. Protection begins with vibration. Just as light disperses darkness, higher frequency energy creates natural barriers. Sound is one of the most potent tools. Gregorian chants, Tibetan singing bowls, or even your own voice humming can disrupt lower vibrational patterns. Salt, long revered from Japanese shrines to European folklore, isn't just a physical purifier. Its crystalline structure emits a frequency that scrambles chaotic energy. Visualizations work too. Imagine a sphere of white gold light around your body, its surface rippling like liquid mercury to repel intrusions. Practical banishing rituals, like the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, use geometric patterns and divine names to clear space. But the most effective shield, inner alignment. Entities thrive in the cracks of unresolved emotion. When you cultivate joy, purpose, and self-respect, you vibrate at a pitch they can't latch onto. Yet these realms aren't to be feared, they're teachers. The Egyptian Jewet's serpent Apophis wasn't just a villain, it was the necessary chaos that tested the soul's readiness for rebirth. In alchemy, the Nagrido stage where matter blackens precedes transformation. Your darkest nights, those moments when despair or rage threatens to swallow you, might actually be initiations. A woman who survived a cult described shadow entities appearing during her escape, not to harm her, but to spotlight the toxic beliefs she'd internalized. Only by facing them could she reclaim her power. Likewise, indigenous traditions often guide initiates through underworld journeys, where confronting demons reveals them as fragmented aspects of the self, begging for integration. The key is discernment. Not every discomfort is an entity. Sometimes fatigue or stress masquerades as spiritual attack, but when patterns repeat too precisely, chronic nightmares of being chased, objects moving inexplicably, or a sense of being watched paired with sudden exhaustion, it's wise to act. Start with the physical. Declutter your space. As stagnant energy clings to clutter, burn sage or pine resin, whose smoke carries ions that neutralize abnormal electromagnetic activity. Iron, used by Celtic druids and African priests alike, disrupts subtle parasitic attachments. Keep a nail in your pocket or a horseshoe by the door. For persistent issues, seek elders, Reiki masters, root workers, or clergy trained in deliverance. But remember, the goal isn't war, it's sovereignty. Dark dimensions are the compost of the cosmos decay that fertilizes new growth. Without them, evolution would lack friction. The shamans who navigate these layers don't do so to conquer, but to alchemize. when you clean your own inner house facing shame, forgiving old wounds, you don't just protect yourself. You become a beacon, proving that even the deepest shadows are no match for awakened light. Sound has always been the invisible architect of reality, a force so potent that ancient cultures built entire spiritual technologies around its power to bend dimensions. Picture a Tibetan singing bowl's hum rippling through the air, not just as music, but as a living key that unlocks gates between worlds. Or imagine monks chanting Om in unison, their voices merging into a sonic bridge, lifting consciousness beyond the body's limits. This isn't metaphor, it's physics. Every mantra, drumbeat, or tuning fork vibrates at a specific frequency, and those vibrations don't just travel through air. They resonate with the very fabric of spiritual dimensions, altering perception like a dial tuning a radio to hidden stations. Take mantras, for example. These aren't mere phrases but precise arrangements of syllables designed to vibrate the etheric body. The Hindu Gayatri mantra targets the third eye, its rhythmic cadence measured at 528 Hz, the same frequency modern researchers associate with DNA repair. When recited with intention, the sound doesn't just echo in the ears. It travels along the spine's nadis, the subtle energy channels, stirring dormant portals within. Similarly, the Buddhist Om Mani Padme Hum acts as a sonic loom, weaving the lower vibrations of earthly concern with the higher hum of compassion. Chanted in a group, and something remarkable happens. Individual brainwaves begin to synchronize, a phenomenon scientists call entrainment. It's as if the shared sound creates a temporary dimensional overlap, where separate minds pulse as one. Binaural beats work on a similar principle, though through technology rather than voice. When one ear hears a tone at 140 Hz and the other at 150, the brain perceives a third, phantom frequency, the 10 Hz difference. This falls into the alpha wave range, the state of relaxed alertness where shamans access visions and mystics receive downloads. Listen long enough, and the brain's electrical activity mirrors that frequency, effectively tuning the mind to dimensions usually filtered out by waking consciousness. It's no wonder these sounds feature in everything from astronaut training to elite athletic programs. They're not just calming, they're dimensional gear shifts. Sacred instruments take this further, acting as crafted intermediaries between realms. The didgeridoo, used by Aboriginal Australians for over 40,000 years, produces a drone that mimics the Earth's own resonant frequency, 7.83 Hz. Played during rituals, its vibrations align the listener's energy field with the planets, a process anthropologists link to the Dreamtime's time-bending journeys. Tibetan bowls, forged from 7 metals representing the celestial bodies, emit complex harmonics that shatter energetic blockages. Clairvoyants watching a bowl session describe its sound as a spiral, pulling auric debris upward, like a vacuum cleanses dust. Even the humble drum, ubiquitous in shamanic traditions, serves a profound purpose. Its steady beat mirrors the theta brainwaves of trance, guiding the practitioner's consciousness safely into the astral plane's currents. The secret lies in harmonics, the way overtones interact to create a multidimensional soundscape. When a trained vocalist chants in a Gothic cathedral, the space's architecture amplifies certain frequencies, some beyond human hearing. These ultrasonic waves have been shown to alter brain chemistry, inducing states indistinguishable from mystical experiences. The Great Pyramid's chambers, theorized by engineers to resonate at specific frequencies, might explain why visitors report vivid visions or spontaneous healings within its walls. Sound, it seems, can physically reshape space and the consciousness perceiving it. What does this mean for you? Start small. Humming daily can stimulate the vagus nerve, a direct line to the body's dimensional interface. Try listening to solfeggio frequencies while meditating. 528 Hz for transformation, 741 for intuition, or simply sit silently near flowing water, nature's oldest frequency tuner. The goal isn't to force a shift, but to allow the vibrations to remind your cells of their innate ability to navigate beyond the visible. After all, if a quartz crystal can store data through vibration, why not your soul? The ancients knew, to alter your dimension, you need not a spaceship, but a song. Light language flows like liquid sunlight, an ancient form of communication that bypasses the mind's logic to speak directly to the soul. Imagine hearing a series of sounds, symbols, or gestures that feel achingly familiar, as if your DNA recognizes them from somewhere beyond memory. This isn't conventional speech, but a vibrational dialect woven from the fabric of higher dimensions, used by mystics and starseeds to transmit energy, activate healing, and unlock dormant wisdom. Some experience it as melodic tones tumbling unbidden from their lips during meditation. Others channel intricate geometric scripts their hands trace effortlessly in the air. A woman in Sweden, with no prior artistic training, began painting radiant glyphs in her sleep, only to discover they matched ancient Lemurian symbols she'd never seen. Light language doesn't conform to earthly grammar. It's the mother tongue of the multidimensional self. Energy healers harness this phenomenon as a direct line to the body's subtle fields. During sessions, practitioners might suddenly vocalize streams of otherworldly syllables, their voices shifting octaves as if guided by an invisible intelligence. Listeners often report physical sensations, warmth spreading through aching joints, tingling along the spine, or waves of emotion releasing without explanation. One Reiki master described it as dialing into a cosmic Wi-Fi, where sound becomes a carrier wave for frequencies that restructure cellular memory. The Mayan shamans of Palenque still use a form of light language called zuvuya, chanting in harmonies that mimic the resonant frequencies of sacred sites, effectively tuning participants to the Earth's own vibrational grid. What makes light language so potent is its adaptability. It morphs to meet the listener's needs. A single session might sound like birdsong to one person and crystalline bells to another. A veteran in Texas, battling PTSD, heard his practitioner's light language as the exact Morse code rhythms he'd used in combat, triggering a flood of repressed memories and subsequent relief. Children on the autism spectrum often respond instinctively, humming back in matching tones as if recalling a forgotten lullaby. This suggests light language isn't invented but remembered, a primal code etched into consciousness itself. The symbols accompanying it deepen the mystery. Seers describe them as living geometry, shifting in real time to reflect the recipient's energy field. A healer in Sedona draws pulsating sigils in the air over clients' chakras, which clairvoyants perceive as spinning wheels of light repairing torn etheric layers. Science edges toward explaining this with cymatics, the study of visible sound vibrations. When sand particles are exposed to specific frequencies, they arrange into mandala-like patterns eerily reminiscent of light language glyphs. It's as if these symbols are the blueprints of creation itself, the hidden architecture behind matter. To engage with light language requires no special training, just openness. Start by listening to recordings of practitioners like Christina Rice or Alana Fairchild. Even without understanding the words, your nervous system might respond with chills or deep calm. Try vocalizing freely during meditation. Let sounds arise without judgment. What emerges may feel silly at first, but consistency unlocks fluency. One school teacher in New Zealand began humming light language during her morning commute, only to find her chronic migraines vanishing within weeks. Others use it to cleanse spaces, singing tones that shatter stagnant energy like a sonic smudge stick. The most breathtaking aspect, light language transcends time. A priestess in Malta channeled a hymn that carbon dated to the island's Neolithic temples, a melody lost for millennia. Whether it's a star system's mathematics encoded in sound or the whispered directives of your higher self, this phenomenon reminds us that communication isn't confined to words. It's a bridge across dimensions, a reminder that somewhere beyond the noise of everyday life, your soul still speaks in the vocabulary of light. Time operates differently in spiritual dimensions, not as a straight line, but as a spiraling river where past, present, and future swirl together like currents in the same water. Here's the paradox. Our physical bodies are bound by clocks and calendars, yet our souls seem to navigate a realm where now stretches infinitely in all directions. Prophetic dreams offer some of the most compelling hints of this fluidity. A man in London dreams of a tidal wave swallowing a coastal city in vivid detail, only to witness the same scene on the news weeks later during a tsunami thousands of miles away. A mother wakes in panic, sensing her child has fallen from a tree, and rushes outside to find it happening in real time. These aren't coincidences. They're glimpses into dimensions where time isn't sequential but simultaneous, like pages of a book laid flat instead of read page by page. Ancient cultures understood this intuitively. The Aboriginal concept of dreamtime describes a dimension where creation myths aren't confined to the past, but are eternally unfolding, accessible through ritual and song. Norse shamans spoke of Weird, a web of fate where every event exists at once, and seers could pull threads to glimpse future patterns. Even Einstein's relativity hints at this. Time slows near massive objects, proving it's not fixed but elastic. Near-death experiencers consistently report life reviews where decades unfold in an instant, not as memories but as a living tapestry where every joy and sorrow exists in the same eternal moment. One woman described seeing her birth, death, and everything between as interconnected points of light, like constellations in a night sky, all visible at once from the right vantage point. Precognition takes this further, revealing how higher dimensions might leak into our linear world. The classified CA files document remote viewers accurately sketching future events, from military operations to natural disasters. A déjà vu isn't just a glitch, it's your brain catching up to a moment your soul already lived. The Cherokee speak of time bundles, where certain events are destined to recur until their lessons are learned. Modern physics toys with similar ideas through retrocausality, where effects can precede causes in quantum experiments. Think of it like a cosmic symphony. From Earth, we hear one note at a time, but in higher realms, the entire composition resonates at once. Practical mysticism taps into this fluidity. Tibetan dream yogas train practitioners to consciously enter the bardo, a timeless gap between states where future events can be perceived. Hawaiian kahunas use honi, the sacred breath, to steer time, aligning with favorable probabilities. Even simple journaling can reveal patterns. Those mornings when you wake with a song in your head, only to hear it on the radio hours later. The key isn't to chase control, but to recognize that time's rigidity is an illusion. When you meditate, pray, or create art, you're not just pausing the clock, you're stepping into the dimension where all times are one. The implications are staggering. If the future already exists in some form, free will isn't negated, it's expanded. Every choice becomes a doorway into a parallel timeline. A vision of illness might not be fate, but a nudge to change course. A dream of flying could be your higher self reminding you of realms where gravity obeys joy. Time in spiritual dimensions isn't a prison but a playground, and the more you awaken to its fluidity, the more life feels less like a path and more like a dance. Ascension isn't about leaving Earth behind. It's about remembering that Earth herself is ascending, and we're woven into her transformation. Picture a great cosmic clock chiming, not to mark an ending, but to signal a shift in vibrational frequency, one that's already tugging at the edges of human awareness. The New Earth concept isn't a physical relocation. It's a dimensional upgrade where consciousness operates from a broader spectrum of reality. Think of it like tuning a radio. As collective awareness dials into higher frequencies, the static of separation and fear begins to clear, revealing channels of unity and co-creation that were always broadcasting. Indigenous elders from the Hopi to the Maori have prophesied this moment for centuries, not as apocalyptic doom, but as a birthing process where humanity sheds outdated paradigms like a snake its skin. At the heart of this shift is a simple but radical idea. Dimensions aren't just layers we ascend through individually, they're collective landscapes we co-create. The Mayan calendar's much debated end date in 2012 wasn't about catastrophe. It signified the close of a 125-year cycle and the start of a new era where time itself would feel compressed, accelerated. Anyone who's remarked how days now blur together or how synchronicities arrive with uncanny precision is sensing this compression firsthand. It's as if the universe is collapsing old, linear timelines to make space for multidimensional living where intuition trumps logic and heart-centered choices carry more weight than ever. A nurse in Toronto describes suddenly knowing patients' ailments before they spoke, while a mechanic in Berlin began seeing geometric patterns overlay his tools, guiding repairs with impossible precision. These aren't random anomalies. They're signposts of a consciousness that's starting to perceive beyond 3D constraints. The new Earth emerges when enough individuals anchor this expanded awareness into daily life. Consider how a hologram works. Every fragment contains the whole. Similarly, each person who cultivates inner peace, practices radical forgiveness, or chooses compassion over fear isn't just transforming themselves, they're stitching new frequencies into the collective field. Studies on the Maharishi effect show that when just 1% of a population meditates together, crime rates and violence measurably drop in the surrounding area. Now extrapolate that to thousands or millions awakening to their multidimensional nature. The chaotic upheavals we witness globally, collapsing systems, ecological reckoning aren't signs of failure, but of dissolution, the necessary crumbling of structures too rigid to hold higher dimensional energy. What does this look like in practice? For some, it's a sudden dissolution of long-time fears, as if an invisible hand erased their emotional blueprints. Others report spontaneous healings or heightened sensitivity to energy, like the teacher who could no longer tolerate processed foods after her body began tasting the chemicals' dissonant vibrations. Relationships transformed too. Soul contracts once rooted in karma now resolve faster, with people exiting your life or entering it with eerie synchronicity. Even technology reflects this shift. Glitches in digital devices during intense emotional releases suggest our energy fields interact with electronics in ways science can't yet explain. A software engineer in California noticed his code only malfunctioned when he was resisting a gut feeling, as if reality itself insisted on alignment. This transition isn't passive. It demands participation. Ancient mystery schools taught that ascension required solar initiation, aligning personal will with cosmic purpose. Today, that might mean taking inspired action despite societal skepticism, or holding steady in love when fear screams louder. The veil between dimensions thins most readily in these spaces of courageous authenticity. When a Ugandan grandmother's prayer circle halts a local drought, or when a corporate lawyer walks away from a high-powered career to build a community garden, they're not just making personal choices, they're sculpting the new Earth's contours. The invitation isn't to wait for a savior or a cosmic event, but to recognize your own role in this grand reconfiguration. Every moment you choose gratitude over complaint, curiosity over judgment, or trust over control, you're not just ascending. You're midwifing a new dimensional reality into being one where the boundaries between spiritual and mundane dissolve, leaving only the luminous truth that you and all of us were never merely human. We are explorers straddling dimensions, and Earth is the crucible where heaven remembers itself. Exploring spiritual dimensions isn't just theoretical, it's an experiential journey, and the tools to navigate it are simpler than you might think. Start with guided meditations, which act like GPS for consciousness, gently steering your awareness beyond the physical. Apps like Insight Timer or YouTube channels, such as the Honest Guys, offer sessions specifically designed for dimensional exploration, often incorporating binaural beats tuned to theta frequencies, the brainwave state where psychic receptivity peaks. One powerful technique is the Gateway Meditation, developed by the Monroe Institute, which uses audio frequencies to synchronize your brain's hemispheres, making it easier to slip into altered states. Close your eyes, focus on a mantra like, "I am more than my body," and visualize a doorway of light. Don't force it. Let the imagery unfold organically. A woman in Colorado described using this method and suddenly finding herself in a crystalline library where ethereal beings handed her scrolls of forgotten knowledge, only to wake with insights that solved a years-old family rift. For those drawn to astral projection, the rope technique is a game changer. As you lie in bed, resist the urge to move, even if your body itches or twitches. This is the vibration stage, where your physical and astral bodies begin separating. Now, imagine a rope hanging above you. Reach out with phantom hands and pull yourself upward, hand over hand. It might feel like floating or spinning. Trust the process. Seasoned projectors recommend keeping a journal by your bedside to record experiences immediately. Details fade fast upon waking. A musician in Oslo practiced this nightly for a month until one evening, he sat up without moving his physical body and floated into a realm where sound manifested as colorful geometric patterns. The key: consistency and patience. Not every attempt will succeed, but even failed tries heighten your sensitivity to subtle energies. Journaling is another underrated portal, especially when structured to track synchronicities and encounters. Begin each entry with prompts like, "Where did I notice the veil thinning today?" or "What symbols or numbers repeated themselves?" Over time, patterns emerge. A teacher in New Mexico logged every déjà vu, an owl sighting for a year, discovering they clustered around major life decisions, confirming her intuition was nudging her toward growth. For dimensional dialogues, try automatic writing. Hold a pen loosely. Ask a question like, "What does my higher self want me to know?" and let your hand move without conscious control. The results might start as scribbles, but often evolve into legible messages or even unfamiliar scripts. A retired firefighter in Australia used this method and began channeling what he called star language, later identified by a linguist as bearing similarities to ancient Sumerian. Sound can also be a bridge. Tibetan singing bowls tuned to 432 Hz, the frequency of the universe's heartbeat, can shatter energetic blockages. Strike one near your third eye during meditation and observe how the vibrations shift your inner landscape. Even humming certain vowel sounds like "ah" for the heart or "e" for the crown can activate corresponding energy centers. A healer in Bali teaches clients to vocalize these tones while visualizing their aura expanding, creating a protective bubble that filters lower vibrations. The most crucial tool: discernment. Not every vision or sensation is a dimensional encounter. Some are subconscious projections. Test experiences by grounding them in action. If a meditation reveals a message to forgive someone, act on it and observe how reality shifts. Reality will mirror your sincerity, synchronicities will multiply, or obstacles will dissolve. Tools are just that, instruments. The real magic lies in your willingness to explore, question, and above all, trust that the unseen dimensions aren't distant realms. They're the hidden currents of your own awakening consciousness, waiting for you to dip your toes or dive in completely. One of the most persistent myths about spiritual dimensions is that they're nothing more than figments of imagination, vivid daydreams, or hallucinations with no basis in reality. But consider this: across cultures and centuries, people with no contact with each other have described nearly identical experiences in these realms. A shaman in the Amazon brews ayahuasca and encounters serpentine beings who teach him healing songs, while across the world, a meditator in Tibet, with no exposure to South American traditions, meets the same serpentine intelligences in deep trance. These aren't random fabrications. They're consistent encounters with layers of existence that operate outside ordinary perception. Even the staunchest skeptics can't ignore the startling parallels in near-death experiences. A cardiac surgeon might dismiss his patient's account of floating above the operating table until that patient accurately describes the surgical tools used and conversations held while clinically dead. Science is beginning to catch up, with studies on shared death experiences and terminal lucidity suggesting consciousness isn't confined to the brain. Another misconception is that only special people, psychics, mystics, or the enlightened can access these dimensions. The truth is far more democratic. You've likely brushed against them without realizing it, in dreams where you flew effortlessly, in moments of déjà vu so strong they halted you mid-step, or in that inexplicable sense of being watched in an empty room. Indigenous cultures have always known this. The Aboriginal concept of the dreamtime isn't reserved for elders. It's a living reality accessible to anyone who learns to read the land's subtle signs. Modern research supports this. A University of Virginia study on children who remember past lives found their verified recollections weren't tied to any special traits, just an openness most of us lose as we grow older. Then there's the dangerous myth that all entities in these dimensions are benevolent. New Age idealism often paints the spiritual realm as a cosmic love fest, but esoteric traditions tell a more nuanced story. The Tibetan Book of the Dead warns of wrathful deities that test the soul's discernment after death, not as punishment, but as mirrors for unresolved fears. Similarly, Kabbalah teaches about the Qliphoth, shadowy realms where energy congeals into distorted forms. A seasoned energy healer can attest, not every presence encountered in meditation is a guide. Some are thought forms born of collective trauma, or even parasitic energies that feed on fear. This isn't fear-mongering, it's spiritual hygiene. Just as you wouldn't wander a foreign city without basic street smarts, navigating dimensions requires respectful awareness. Perhaps the most limiting myth is that exploring these realms distracts from real life. Ancient Egyptian priests didn't retreat from society. They used dimensional knowledge to design temples aligning with stellar energies that still baffle engineers today. The Renaissance genius Isaac Newton credited his calculus breakthroughs to alchemical explorations in the subtle realms. Modern neuroscience reveals why. Practices like meditation and astral projection activate the brain's superior parietal lobe, enhancing spatial reasoning and creativity. A tech CEO who practices transcendental meditation might call it stress relief, but those daily 20-minute dips into expanded awareness likely fuel the innovative flashes that grow her company. The final debunked myth, that science and spirituality are at odds. Quantum physics now echoes what mystics have said for millennia, that reality is a web of vibrating energy where observers influence what's observed. The double-slit experiment proves particles behave differently when measured, suggesting consciousness shapes matter. String theory posits 11 dimensions curled into our own, while biocentrism argues that life creates the universe, not vice versa. Even the U.S. government's declassified Stargate project documented soldiers using remote viewing, a dimensional navigation technique, to gather accurate intel across continents. The boundary between mystical and scientific is far blurrier than we've been taught. What emerges from shattering these myths isn't blind belief, but a curious middle path, one where wonder walks hand in hand with discernment. Whether you're a logic-driven engineer who senses guidance during near sleep or an artist who channels symbols from somewhere beyond, the dimensions aren't out there. They're the hidden frequencies of your own expanded awareness, waiting for the static of doubt to clear so the signal can come through. The most profound shifts in consciousness often happen not during grand rituals, but in the quiet moments between brewing your morning coffee and tying your shoes. Staying connected to higher dimensions isn't about escaping daily life. It's about infusing the ordinary with the extraordinary until the boundary between them dissolves. Start with the simplest portal you carry everywhere, your breath. Before answering emails or scrolling news feeds, pause for 3 conscious inhales and exhales, imagining each breath drawing golden light from your crown to your toes. A surgeon in Boston began this practice and found her hands moving with uncanny precision during operations, as if guided by an unseen intelligence. Breath becomes the bridge oxygen for the body, prana for the subtle energy fields. Creating sacred space doesn't require elaborate altars, just intentionality. A windowsill with a candle, a seashell from a meaningful walk, or even a smartphone wallpaper of a mandala can act as a dimensional anchor. The key is consistency. Light that candle while sipping tea, and over time, the flickering flame trains your nervous system to drop into presence. Studies on neuroplasticity show how repeated rituals rewire the brain. Monks who chant daily develop thicker gray matter in regions linked to focus and emotional regulation. Your sacred space becomes a tuning fork, resonating with higher frequencies until your entire home hums with that energy. A schoolteacher in Lisbon lined her doorway with clear quartz and reported students subconsciously lowering their voices upon entering, as if the room itself enforced reverence. Mindfulness transforms mundane actions into portals. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on water's fluid wisdom, how it adapts yet remembers, much like the astral plane. Folding laundry mirrors integrating disparate aspects of the self. Even commuting can morph into a journey through inner landscapes if you tune to the subtle signs. A license plate repeating numbers you've been seeing. A stranger's laugh that sparks déjà vu. The French mystic Teilhard de Chardin called this seeing the universal in the particular. When you brush against these moments, don't analyze, absorb. The mind interprets, but the soul recognizes. Nature offers the most accessible dimensional gateway. A walk in the park isn't just exercise, it's immersion in Earth's living energy grid. Trees, especially ancient ones, act as natural antennas, linking terrestrial and cosmic realms. Place your palms on bark and feel the thrum of mycorrhizal networks, nature's version of the internet, transmitting information beneath your feet. A financial analyst in Tokyo began lunch breaks under a 300-year-old ginkgo tree and started dreaming solutions to complex market patterns, her intuition syncing with what Druids called the green consciousness. Technology, often seen as spirituality's opposite, can also serve. Apps generating solfeggio frequencies or binaural beats subtly shift brainwaves during your subway commute. Even social media, when curated mindfully, becomes a mirror of synchronicity. That friend's spontaneous post about dragonflies might be the sign you needed after this morning's dragonfly meditation. The boundary between digital and sacred blurs when used with awareness. A software engineer in California programmed her smart lights to pulse at 7.83 Hz, Earth's resonance frequency, and found her apartment became a vortex for lucid dreams and creative downloads. Integration isn't about adding tasks to your day. but subtracting the noise that drowns out dimensional whispers. Try subtractive rituals, replacing 15 minutes of scrolling with cloud gazing, or swapping caffeine with a cup of Tulsi tea, an herb revered in Ayurveda for opening the heart to higher guidance. Notice how these small shifts create ripples, the way humming a mantra while gardening might attract bees in perfect geometric formations, or how journaling before bed unlocks dreams where departed loved ones offer comfort. The ultimate practice, trusting those fleeting impressions, the goosebumps during a song's crescendo, the sudden knowing to call an old friend who's just been thinking of you. These aren't coincidences but confirmations. You're already multidimensional. The veil was never as thick as you were taught. The more you honor these moments, the more they amplify, until one day you realize you're not visiting higher dimensions anymore. You're living from them, and the world around you bends ever so gently to reflect that truth. Sometimes the most convincing evidence of spiritual dimensions comes not from ancient texts or scientific studies, but from ordinary people experiencing extraordinary moments that defy explanation. Take Sarah, a midwife from Vermont who'd never given much thought to metaphysics until the night she walked into a patient's hospital room and saw a luminous figure standing near the bed. It wasn't ghostly, she described later. It felt more real than real, like intense sunlight shaped into a human form. The figure placed its hands over the laboring mother's abdomen, and instantly, the baby's erratic heartbeat stabilized on the monitor. When Sarah hesitantly mentioned it to the mother afterward, the woman smiled knowingly. "My grandmother was a healer in Puerto Rico," she whispered. "I've been praying for her to come." Then there's Marcus, a skeptical engineer who scoffed at astral projection until an out-of-body experience rewired his understanding of reality. After falling asleep one evening, he found himself floating near his bedroom ceiling, watching his own body snore below. Panicked, he reached for his nightstick, and only for his hand to pass straight through the lamp. "That's when I noticed the cord," he said, "a silver thread connecting my floating self to my physical body, pulsing like a live wire." The experience lasted mere seconds, but it left him obsessed with studying the phenomenon. Years later, he stumbled upon an ancient Taoist text describing the very same silver cord as the tether between physical and astral bodies, a detail he'd never encountered before his experience. For Alicia, a barista in Seattle, dimensional boundaries blurred during a near-death experience after a car crash. "Time shattered," she recalled. "One moment I was trapped in twisted metal, the next I was standing in a library where books pulsed with living light." A being made of shifting colors guided her to a specific volume that, when touched, flooded her with memories of past lives, including one as a medieval scribe. "I'd always had an irrational fear of fire, and suddenly I understood why." She saw herself burning in a monastery raid. When paramedics revived her, third-degree burns covered her legs in the exact patterns from her vision. The physical scars faded, but the knowledge remained. That library wasn't a hallucination. It was a place we all go between lives, where our stories are kept safe. Then there's the chilling account from Noah, a retired firefighter who volunteered at hospice. One night, as he sat with a dying man named Mr. Ruiz, the room temperature plummeted. His monitor showed a flat line, but his chest kept rising, like he was breathing something thicker than air. Then Noah saw them, shadowy figures crowding the corners of the room. Not menacing, just waiting. As Mr. Ruiz took his last breath, a golden light burst from his chest, and the shadows lunged not to attack, but to catch the light like a treasured offering. The next morning, the patient's daughter handed Noah a folded note from her father's pillowcase. "Tell the big guy with the tattoo I said thanks. The angels came like we talked about." Noah had never mentioned his sleeve tattoo to the family. These stories share an undeniable thread. Each person was irrevocably changed by their encounter, not through abstract belief, but through visceral, personal proof. A kindergarten teacher in Berlin started seeing her students' auras after surviving lightning strikes. A Marine with PTSD found relief not from therapy, but from a recurring dream where a wolf-like being taught him to breathe through the soles of his feet, a technique later identified in Qigong as grounding prana. What makes these accounts so compelling isn't just their strangeness, but their consistency across cultures and contexts. The details vary: silver cords, luminous guides, shadowy watchers, but the underlying message remains. We're swimming in an ocean of consciousness far vaster than our five senses perceive. Perhaps the most touching submission came from elderly sisters in Kyoto who'd shared the same dream on the same night, their deceased mother serving tea in a sunlit garden neither had ever visited. When they compared notes, one recalled their mother humming a lullaby lost to time. The other remembered the embroidered cranes on her kimono. Only later, sorting through attic boxes, did they find a faded photograph of their mother as a young woman in that very garden, wearing that exact kimono. "We thought grief was playing tricks," the elder sister wrote, "but the photo proved it. Love doesn't stay buried. It finds its way back, sometimes through walls we didn't even know were there." What we've explored together isn't just theory. It's a living map of existence, one that stretches far beyond the limits of our ordinary perception. From the etheric blueprint humming beneath your skin to the boundless love of the Buddhic plane, from the astral highways where thought becomes reality to the timeless archives of the causal dimension, these layers of reality aren't separate from you. They are you, the expanded contours of your own consciousness waiting to be remembered. Every synchronicity that's made your breath catch, every dream that's lingered like a half-remembered song, every inexplicable knowing that's guided you away from danger or toward joy. These aren't accidents. They're invitations, proof that you've always been navigating these dimensions, even before you had the words to describe them. Understanding these realms changes everything. It transforms the way you interpret déjà vu, not as a glitch, but as your soul brushing against its own timelessness. It reshapes grief, revealing how connections forged in love outlast the body's limits. It turns everyday choices into sacred acts, because when you realize your emotions ripple across dimensions, you begin to tend them like a gardener tends the soil. A therapist in Sweden shared how this perspective revolutionized her work. When clients grasped their anger wasn't just a feeling, but an energy congesting their etheric body, they approached healing with newfound reverence. A teacher in Mexico incorporated simple dimension awareness exercises into her classroom, only to watch her students' creativity and empathy bloom as they sensed the interconnectedness of all things. This journey doesn't end when the video does. It's just the beginning. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Have you glimpsed these dimensions in your own life? Maybe during meditation, or in a moment of crisis when time seemed to bend. Perhaps you've met a guide in a dream whose message still resonates years later. Your experiences are vital threads in this collective exploration, reminding us that mystery isn't just for mystics. It's woven into the fabric of every ordinary, extraordinary life. If this glimpse into the multidimensional tapestry has sparked something in you, consider subscribing. We'll dive even deeper, exploring sacred geometry's role in bridging realms, decoding the secrets of ancient portal sites, and even practical guides for safe astral travel. But for now, take this with you. Reality is vaster, stranger, and more alive than we've been taught. The dimensions aren't destinations, they're home. And every time you trust that whisper of intuition, every time you pause to marvel at a synchronicity, you're not just learning about them, you're remembering how to dance between them here, now, in this ever-unfolding moment where all